This is rental car number 122. Today I'm driving the 2018, almost said 19 there, but it's only a 2018 Ford Escape SE. This is a four-door compact SUV that seats 5 and retails for around $26,000. I was pretty excited to drive this one. I think I've driven most of Ford's other SUVs and never had an Escape, so this is a first for me. Let's jump in by looking under the hood. We have a 1.5-liter inline 4-cylinder engine with a 6-speed shiftable automatic transmission. This thing kicks out 179 horsepower and has 2,000 pounds of towing capacity. Not a whole lot of power, so we get some pretty good gas mileage. 23 miles per gallon in the city, 30 on the highway with a 15.7-gallon fuel tank. I don't know about you, but that's kind of a weird number. Why 15.7? Couldn't we make it 16? Anyway. Gas by me right now is about $2.59 per gallon. That means if you fill this thing up by me, it's going to cost you around $40. All right, but enough with all the numbers. Let me share with you what it's like to actually drive this car in the real world. Let's start with acceleration. So I wasn't able to find a decent 0 to 60 time anywhere on the internet. Car and Driver says this thing clocks in at 9.2 seconds, but that was with an Escape with, more horsepower than the one I got. But basically what I want to tell you is that acceleration isn't great. This is not the fastest SUV on the road, but I didn't really notice. Frankly, I found the Escape to be pretty responsive and easy to drive, and I really don't have any complaints about acceleration. But I'm not a big speed nut. I'd rather have a comfortable ride than a fast ride, so you might think differently. One thing I wasn't real keen on was the handling. I just didn't like it. I've driven a lot of SUVs recently, and this is probably the first one I've had in a long time where I felt the need to slow down pretty dramatically when I was going around a long curve on an exit ramp. It's hard to describe, but it just kind of felt like if I pushed the car a little bit, that back end was going to slip out from underneath me, and that's it's not a great feeling. So what I'm trying to say here is I just didn't feel super comfortable driving the Escape. And I'm not sure I could recommend it to you either. But enough of my complaints. Let's jump inside the vehicle so we can take a look around together. Here's the key. It's actually a physical key, which I haven't seen much lately. A couple of buttons on the base of the key itself, lock, unlock, and a panic button. And then you get Ford's logo on the back. You start the car up just like you'd expect. Let's watch it boot up. Pretty standard steering wheel setup. You have buttons here on the left-hand side to interact with the screen and the gauge cluster. Down below you have some additional buttons to start and stop cruise control. On the right-hand side we have buttons to interact with some of the entertainment features, volume controls, and then a button to interact with the voice recognition system. Just want to point out that the stalks on the Escape, they're just a little bit different than I'm used to seeing. It's not exactly a straight stick like you usually see. Kind of goes up and jumps off at an angle. Not a big deal, but I think worth mentioning. Gauge cluster is, it's nice. Not the best I've seen. You have RPMs on the left. You have a fuel gauge, temperature gauge on the bottom, speedometer on the right, and then a small digital screen up here in the center. You'll notice that you have a temperature gauge in the upper left-hand corner, your odometer, the lower left-hand corner. Tells you what gear you have the car in down here, and then you also get a compass, and then this icon is for the auto hold feature that I'll talk about in a second. There's not a ton of information on these on this screen, but there's enough to get the basic sense for what's going on in the vehicle, and it's just nice to have a kind of a crisp, colorful screen right there in the center of the gauge cluster. Over on the left-hand side, we have our window controls, mirror controls. Up on the dash, we have a dial to adjust the headlights. The controls right here adjust the brightness of the screen up in the gauge cluster. Fog lights, and then a trunk release right there. Down below, there's nothing but the hood release. Up top, we have a door latch, door locks. Side view mirrors are a good size with a nice cutout in the upper left-hand corner to give you a kind of a wider view around the vehicle. And you get that same cutout on the passenger side mirror as well. Up top, pretty standard controls up here. There are 2 lights, a sunglass holder, and then you have controls up here to adjust the moonroof. You can open up the shade and then open up the window itself right here. Pretty large roof too. When you open it up, you really do get quite a bit of light in the cabin of the vehicle. And then below there we have the rear view mirror. You'll notice there's no buttons of any kind on the mirror. Sometimes you get your garage door remote buttons over here or an automatic dimmer feature, but you don't have that on this vehicle. And it's also kind of interesting to see that the switch, the toggle switch for the mirror is kind of tucked all the way in the back. Down below there we have a small screen. It's kind of tucked underneath the lip of the dash, and it's behind a storage area that has some kind of sticky rubbery material right here. So it should be perfect to keep a cell phone or maybe a toll pass, because that material isn't going to allow things to slip around too easily. The screen itself is fairly small. It's almost an identical size to the screen in the gauge cluster, but there is some useful information on here. You get a temperature gauge in the upper left-hand corner, clock in the upper right-hand corner, and then you'll see these are menu buttons down below that change depending on what screen you're on. Now this is not a touch screen. You interact with it with the controls right here on the dash. So buttons up here to choose which menu you want to jump to, and then kind of a directional guide right here to adjust everything else. Not a whole lot of information right here on this screen, just your basics. You know, shifting between maybe your cell phone that's connected via Bluetooth or the radio, or maybe Sirius XM if you have it. It's pretty easy to use, however, because you do have some pretty nice big buttons to interact with the system, and honestly I had no trouble at all. I connected my phone via Bluetooth within about 10 seconds and it's worked fine the entire time I've been driving the car. A couple other things about this area of the car: you do have a CD player. That's right here, and then two pretty large vents on the left and right side of the entertainment features. You also have your hazard button right here on the bottom. Below there we have our climate controls. Simple button to turn the system on and off. Buttons right here to adjust the intensity of the fan. You get a digital readout right here to show you what temperature the car is set at, along with how intense the fan is blowing. Pretty simple controls everywhere else. I mean, to know where the vents are blowing, you get this nice kind of setup to show you vents are blowing up top, down below, or together. Heated seat controls right here and right here. This is for you while you're driving the car, and this is for your passenger. And nice dials to adjust the temperature. These are nice, I say, because they have a little bit of a rubber covering on top, so it's really nice and easy to grip them. Down below there we have our passenger airbag warning indicator. Let me move the gear shift so you can see a little better. And then the auto start stop feature. I thought this was auto hold. Auto hold is a feature where when you stop the vehicle will stay stopped even when you take your foot off the brake pedal. But this is auto start stop. When you activate it, and it's activated right now, and you stop the car, the system's going to turn the car's engine off automatically to save fuel consumption. And then you have a traction control on and off button right here. Behind there is the gear shift, leather on the bottom. On top we have kind of a rubbery feeling material, so your hand shouldn't slip around too much. On the side there's a plus and minus button that allows you to shift the gears manually if you choose to. And there's also sport mode capability, so you can shift the gear shift all the way back and then take advantage of all of the performance available on the Escape. I also want to point out though that when you shift that gear shift into reverse, you do get a rear view camera up here on the dash. It's kind of small, but the resolution is nice, and you do get some guides. That's that red, yellow, and green you see right there to sort of guide you when you're reversing the vehicle. And this is small, but you can still see it from fairly far away because the resolution is so good. There's also a zoom feature. You see this little icon down here, this magnifying glass? When you press the corresponding button right here, the camera zooms in so you can see what's directly behind the vehicle, which is pretty useful. Then behind the gear shift we have a small storage cutout with a rubbery material on there. It's kind of sticky, along with a USB port and a power port, although you will need an adapter for that power port. Still useful though. Behind there we get a small storage cutout that I've found pretty perfect for my cell. It's where I've been keeping it the whole time I've been driving the vehicle. Two cup holders behind there, along with my kombucha for later today. And then your electronic parking brake. This one's fairly easy to use. Pull it up to engage it and push it down to deactivate it. Typically these have like a red LED light actually on the button itself to tell you whether or not it's engaged, but not on this vehicle. To see whether or not the brake is engaged, you got to look up into the gauge cluster, and there's a little red light. You see that brake right there? That'll tell you whether or not you have the parking brake engaged. And behind there we have a small storage area. Again, that's my light, by the way. It's got this rubbery material on the bottom that's kind of sticky. And then behind there you have the center armrest wrapped in leather, and it's got two controls on it, so two switches you can press to open it up. So I'll start by pressing the one on the left. When you press that button, you get access to the large storage space underneath, and it looks like there's also a 12-volt power port down there. Pretty big space. Now, if you close it and you press the button on the right, now you have access to the small storage area right here. This is, again, this sticky rubbery material and a small sort of modular space that you can keep some smaller items. So this space gets sucked into the roof of the lid when you press that left button. So it's actually right here now. And then over on the passenger side, we have the glove box. Pretty decent size. Looks like someone left me a National receipt today. Did you know that National Enterprise are exactly the same company and they rent out the same cars? I was kind of shocked by that because National always charges more. Anyway, do get the owner's manual in here. Pretty decent size space, and it looks like a small shelf up here as well, which should be perfect to keep the owner's manual. So you can keep that out of the way until you need it and have access to the large storage area underneath. Alright, I jumped in the back seat. This driver's seat is pushed back almost all the way, and you'll see that I still have a pretty good amount of leg room back here, probably 3 to 4 inches between my knees and the back of that seat. The seats are made out of a kind of a nice cloth-like material. This feels really clean, actually. And they have some pockets built in. So not a whole lot of room down in here, but you know, it's good to have extra storage space in places like this. Also on the back of the center armrest for the front seat passengers, you do have 2 dedicated vents and then a power port all the way at the bottom. Looks like you will need an adapter though for that one. Other than that, not a whole lot of features back here. You get window controls and a door latch. You do get a nice light up here, kind of a circular shape. It's actually right by where your head would be, so it's kind of nice if you're going to use it as a reading light, I guess. And then a handle and a place to hang your jacket. There's also a center armrest, kind of has a tab right here to pull it down. There's 2 cup holders in here. And then the car seat anchors are extremely shallow. This is a pet peeve of mine. I hate having to fish for car seat anchors. But as you can see, those are already exposed. We don't have to manipulate the seats at all, so it should be really easy to install a car seat back here. Also, the seats do recline. Not a whole lot, but as you can see, you can lean them back a little bit, which is good. I mean, if you're going to ride for a long time in the back of this vehicle, you should be, well, you should at least be able to make yourself slightly more comfortable. Alright, so that's everything in the back seat. Let's close things out by taking a look at the storage space in the very back of the Escape. You get a nice rectangular shape back here. The wheel wells don't really infringe at all in the storage space, so you should be able to get a lot of things back here. Also, it's nice to see that you get a power port back here just in case you need to keep some electronics back here, maybe when you're tailgating or something fun like that. Underneath the floor of this area, there's a full spare tire, which is great to see, along with kind of a modular storage area so you can keep some other odds and ends under here, just for those emergency situations when you need to change a tire or something like that. Also, the back seats do fold down. You just have to pull up on these little levers right here, and then the seats fold down without any effort at all. And then you can take advantage of all of the cargo space on the Escape and really haul around some larger items if you need to. Alright, so that's pretty much everything, end to end of the 2018 Ford Escape SE. I had a great day driving this car, really enjoyed myself quite a bit. So after probably over 200 miles, I'm going to give this one 3 stars. Look, it's a low rating, but don't get the impression that I hated the Escape. I just wasn't a big fan of how small the display was in the dash. It's just too tiny for me. And also, I wasn't real keen on the handling. But you might feel differently. If you do, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for joining me for this one. And I hope you join me next time when I rent and review my 123rd rental car. I'll see you then.